Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yo no sé si ese mogollón que hay fuera se está yendo o está entrando.
I don't know if the crowd at the background is coming in or coming out.
Bueno, creo que lo que se acaba de hablar hace un...
What we have just discussed is the introduction of what we are going to see now in a more strategic way. We have mentioned a connected car, and some of us had some chills. So we're going to discuss now how this can affect the transport system. The transport system, as you know, is one of the strategic sectors within the critical infrastructures protection. We're talking about the road transport, railway transport, air and maritime transport. Every one of us obviously need them, and they are also necessary for the national economy. As happened last week, means of transport, without any exceptions, are suffer from sabotage when there are some social movements. As we saw in the previous intervention, everything is increasingly interconnected. Some figures. In 2010, we were talking about 46 terabytes per second at a global level, and today we are talking about 1,400, so 30 times more than what there used to be in 2010. As you know, the Internet of Things, as said in a Gartner study, is going to pass to move to 20.4 billion devices connected, in comparison to 7 billion devices connected in 2017. So this is good. This is good news, as long as these systems and devices are securized, because we are all dependent on networks. So the consequences on infrastructures can be huge and can lead us to an awful outlook. Not only to have our car break down, but also it could imply more consequences. I am going to give you some data that the director of INCIBE mentioned this morning. In 2014, we had 14,700 incidents, only 63 of which were against critical infrastructures. Last year, we have 111,000 cyber crimes, but the number of incidents on critical infrastructures was 722. So the ratio is much higher on this type of infrastructures for obvious reasons. So in order to discuss this, we have representatives of this sector. We have Alex Palazón, who is the head of the car security incident team of SEAT, whose objective is to coordinate centrally in order to correct risks and to protect data of the vehicle. I think this is the perfect timing after the previous intervention. On the railway sector, we have Celestino, who is head of security of products and solutions of Siemens Mobility Spain. We also have José de Lara, who is General Director of IDE company. and who is a specialist in maritime transport and harbor management. And we also have Laurent Porracchia, who is who works for Airbus, Europe and Middle East, and who promotes the development of cyber defense at a European level. He comes from the École Militaire, the military training school of France. They will be able to tell us about the impact on technologies, the impact of technologies on mobility sectors which are very important also for the banking, financing system, and for the well-being of the whole society. So now I'm going to give the floor to our experts, and let's start with Alex Palazón. Alex, you have the floor. Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank ENISE for inviting me. In line with what Fernando said, our sector is suffering from many changes. We had isolated vehicles in the past, but right now we have an ecosystem that combines many elements, and we need to securize all of them. So we need to focus on that target with that in mind. So we need to change our way of development and our way of operation. This panel's objective is to show you the challenges of the transport sector, and I'm going to give you the perspective of SEAT. Currently, we have the challenge of securing the connected car. Previously, you have been told about these vehicles, and you can be aware now of the challenges. SEAT divides it into 4 parts: governance, protection, response. So protection is to securize all the elements of the car. When we're talking about monitoring and response, we are meaning that we need to monitor the systems in the best possible way, and through governance we set security targets, we monitor them, and we comply with all the regulations. And this is perfect for me to explain to you a new regulation that will come out in 2020. It is promoted by the European Commission of the United Nations in Europe, and it will have 2 blocks: the CSMS, so Cybersecurity Management System. As a company, we need to have a certification that we have processes that guarantee the security of the car throughout its life cycle. So there are already some technical requirements, and now we're going to add security requirements. So you can think, is there any standard in order to do that in SEAT? We are working on the 434 ISO, but recently it will be published. And this is what we have on the table. Additionally, if we look forward, in 2030, the self-driving car will already be incorporated in our lives, and the demand is going to be very high. And we need to develop this vehicle in a very safe way. You might think, this is difficult, right? This will be complicated. Yes, maybe. But as we are already seeing, there are some testing in Uber, for example, in California. So the car in itself is a regular car which is added some other technologies, which obviously increases the number of attack vectors. which can be critical for cybersecurity. And then, how are we going to develop the software for those self-driving cars? Right now, we develop a version, we test it, and we produce it. But in the future, we will need to develop new functionalities and updates to add them to the vehicle, so the pace of security measures will need to be much faster. So we'll need experts in cybersecurity which are faster and more trained in these aspects. We are already talking about the software world, which already have tools that have these functionalities, and this software world has already trained some experts, so we can take both from this sector. And obviously, the model of cars by 2030 will have changed, because the sense of the propriety will have changed. The car will belong to some fleet, which are operated. Those cars will go back to their to a parking lot in order to go through some maintenance works or revision works at the end of the day. So in this case, security will be seen as a whole. I think I do not have any more time, so I'm going to be brief. We're working a lot on priority. We are prioritizing security, because without security there is no safety, and safety is important for our passengers. And with this, this is the end of my intervention. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, I think it is important to securize. I think one of the things that manufacturers and regulators are doing is to understand that security goes hand in hand with the business, especially in the automotive sector, where security is one of the key points. So in the future, when we will have self-driving cars, we will be completely dependent on the technology in this case. Now we're going to move on to Celestino Ray. So we move from the road transport to the railway transport, how this affect to the security.
Well, good afternoon. Once again, thanks for the 13th ENISE for having given me the chance to participate in this panel. In the railway sector, from the beginning, we've been very concerned about security. It is true that security, well, in English there are two words to define this, safety and security. Safety means avoiding accidents, non-intended incidents, but security is related to avoiding targeted incidents that are not considered accidents. From the beginning, we've been always working in safety, but also we have tried to prepare ourselves in order to be more secure, to promote security. It is true that through the use of isolated networks, protocols, and specific technologies, we can handle most of classic attacks. Also, when we talk about new digital technologies such as cloud computing, mobile devices, interconnectivity of our systems, we must make sure that we do not forget anything regarding security. In Siemens, we've always been concerned and focused on cybersecurity. In fact, Siemens is a promoter of the Charter of Trust that in 2018 gathered 18 industrial partners that signed a public commitment in order to fight against cybersecurity threats. Also, in Siemens Mobility Spain, we've reached an agreement with INCIBE in order to collaborate and try that our products are able to detect potential threats and reduce them as much as possible. We have many colleagues here from the transportation sector, and it is true that there are some standards and regulations that could be generally applied. However, in the railway sector, there are specific characteristics that make it special or different. For example, the distributed architecture, or, for example, the long life cycles and the proximity between this sector and the passengers. This is why we are working on specific measures in order to mitigate potential cybersecurity threats. All these transportation systems share some things, but we'll have to be specific depending on our needs. Regarding the railway, our main regulation is the 62443, and also this talks about safety and security. There is also another regulation, the 15029, that also tackles these issues and that makes all railway companies to focus on safety and security and system protection. And this is why we have to work especially harder on these two concepts, security and safety. As for digitalization, potential threats in the railway sector, we've always been concerned about the digitalization because nobody would like to see that a sign is between red and green color. We need to have our concepts clear, and this is why digitalization has been a main concern since the beginning. Well, thank you so much, Celestino. It's true that this connection between safety and security is a must. It's a connection that we must take into account, and especially when we are talking about cyberspace, security has a greater weight right now, but both must be combined. Yes, and I want to also say that something that is not secure is probably not safe either. Well, thank you so much. Now we are going to move to the sea world, and Pepe Lara is going to talk about the cyber risks that can happen in the marine sector and the consequences and trends. Well, thank you. Well, 60, 90, 60 are the measures of the sector. 60% of world population lives on coast areas. 90% of goods are transported by the sea, and 60% of critical infrastructures are located in the coast too. So this is why it's important to have secure systems in the marine sector. We are sharing a common space that we cannot fully control. The digital world has changed completely the perspective of the marine sector. We are realizing that we are more vulnerable than ever. Before, it was very hard to access a ship, and we had OMI standards regarding safety and security that were quite strict, but now we have external agents that can access remotely to ships without having to be near the boat, near the ship. Of course, overcoming different security measures of ports, etc.
Que lo importante realmente ya se me va el tiempo, ¿eh? Me vais a dar un minuto más luego. El 3, vale, mejor. Es el 4. ¿Está ok?
So if 60% of the population is living in coast areas, we can go to a refinery and to create a catastrophe that is going to affect a highly populated area. And the risk is not just for the goods, but also for the population. And same thing happens when we are talking about big floating cities. For example, a cruise that you can see in the screen can have up to 9,000 people. We were saying before that in a car we may have 3 or 4 people, but when we do have 9,000 people that can access the dashboard of a ship, I mean, this is a threat. These type of ships are autonomous for a long time, but the regulation do not allow that. But I've been navigating with these autonomous systems, but before, of course, we didn't have to face the threats that I've mentioned before, and that puts into risk the security and the safety of everyone, not just ships and transportation. So with INCIBE, we, in 2014, 5 years ago, we started launching a campaign in order to raise awareness in the marine sector with the National Security Committee, and we decided to involve the whole sector in order to establish the measures that are needed. There are several certifications, ISO certifications, in order to guarantee that we comply with the minimum standards. But it is true that in this digital transformation phase, we need the IT support, because it is true that I feel that we are not very connected sometimes. So I would like to ask all the IT experts to approach these solutions to the marine sector so that we can offer solutions to or approach digital transformation in all these ships that we have. The F-110 is going to be the most sophisticated ship in the world, and this is going to be a ship with missiles, and we will have to take the appropriate measures in order to avoid that this ship can be hacked, and in order to avoid any security issue that may be of importance. So this digital transformation can only be done with the help of the Spanish technological sector and the technology companies. Other measures that we would like to take is using experiences in other sectors, such as the railway sector, automotive sector, etc. We want to be more connected to these sectors in order to comment on the incidents that they may have had. We've had a huge incident in the marine sector. We had an attack. I don't really remember, but the system was blocked, and this the cost of this incident was 300 million euros. And in the end, the transition between the land and marine world should be smoother, and we are seeing that the bill of loading is changing. We are modifying these type of documents that could imply the entry of dangerous materials, the stealing of goods, etc. And this is something that we must take into account. Well, so as I understand, of course, our systems are more vulnerable, but because the more sophisticated they are, the more vulnerable we are, and this is why we need to enhance security in these systems so that sophistication and security can evolve at the same path, and this is why the industry has a very important role to play here. And we are going to move to the last speaker right now. I'm going to give the floor to Laurent Porracchia. We are going to move to the air sector. He's going to talk about how to improve cyber resilience in the air sector. He's going to speak in English. He speaks Spanish better than he thinks, but he's going to speak in English because he feels more comfortable that way. So, Laurent, you have the floor. Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here in order to talk about cybersecurity. Well, I'm French. Sorry for my Spanish and my accent. I'm working in Airbus. I'm the global sales director of CNP of Airbus. We have a whole department devoted to cybersecurity. We are more than 800 people in Spain, UK, and France, and in Germany, and our main client or main customer is the government. We also work for European institutions and critical infrastructures. Now I want to start speaking English, if you don't mind.
So how we can face the different challenges. Después prefiero seguir en inglés. Thank you again. So how we can face the different challenges in the industrial IoT for the aerospace industry, and how we can involve cybersecurity in all what we call the extended enterprise, covering all the supply chain. As you may know, and all my colleagues here, we rely on some supply chain companies to ensure our productions. And today this is a real challenge, because in the Industry 4.0 we connect everything. So it's not because you are well protected in your enterprise that you cannot have a look to the other people already connected to your network. And that's very important, because if there is a breach inside the supply chain, you can really be involved in terms of cybersecurity. So for Airbus, it's really important to cover all these cybersecurity aspects, not only for ourselves, but also for our partners and our supply chain. And with all these digitalization concepts, so the Industry 4.0, how we can optimize cybersecurity with supply chain, I will try to give you some examples now. Very simple. Of course, we can talk about that for hours, and I'm sure you will be pleased of that. But I only have 7 minutes, less than 7 minutes now, so I will go deeply. So we can have several things, and I've tried to put on this slide only big 5 bubbles where you can understand where are the different risks for us in Airbus. As I said before, we have to talk and to put security into IoT in the smart cyber factory. This is mainly the Industry 4.0. As we can involve IoT, as we can involve cybersecurity in what we call our final assembly line, because if today there is a malware impacting our final assembly line, we cannot deliver anymore any aircraft to our customer. And today, and this year, we delivered more than 2 aircraft per day to our customers. So you can imagine the impact in terms of revenues to our company if we are not able to deliver such aircraft or helicopters or space systems to our customers. So it's very important to protect what we call the smart cyber factory. We involve also many things related to artificial intelligence, to predictability of things related to this smart cyber factory. Something very important on the second bullet is on the right, the built-in security. One of my colleagues already spoke about that, and I think it's very important in the ferrocarril industry to talk about safety and security. I mean, in the aviation sector, it's very complementary. I mean, we don't have to think on the one hand on security and on the other hand on safety without involving the both at the same level. And for us in the aviation sector, we really push for a built-in security, security by design approach. As soon as we build a new aircraft, as soon as we build a new satellite, a new helicopter, we think since the very beginning about implementing security and safety. And that's very important. And every employee in our company, they are focused on safety and security. Okay. And it's still very important for us, as you may imagine. So it's more a question of trust to our customers and to our partners to have such built-in security. The third point is what we call Security Operations Center. So how we can monitor in our overall industry involving the supply chain, all these security events, just to detect, to prevent in advance things that can really put some very difficult things in our network. So this is by putting what we call SOC, so Security Operations Center, to monitor 24/7 and every day in a year all the security events. So it's very important. We have in Airbus today 5 Security Operations Center, 4 national Security Operations Center, 1 in each country, as you may imagine, France, Spain, UK, and Germany, and 1 international in Toulouse. So it's very important, and we have all people really dedicated to that, and I encourage every big company to have such Security Operations Center. The 4th point, and not the last one, is very important.
Time out.
One moment.
The 4th point is very important. This is what we call cyber range. This is something we have developed in Airbus Cybersecurity. It's really a homemade product. This is really a platform really to simulate and to train our people on cybersecurity. It could be IT staff, it could be people related to production area, but they can really simulate in this environment all the cybersecurity attacks, and they are ready to face these cybersecurity attacks. So it's very important that you train your people from day to day to thwart and to mitigate every risk through this product. And the last thing is really something, I cannot read it anymore, it's threat intel. Threat intel, yes. Threat intel is something also really important, and is really correlated to what we call Security Operations Center, as you can prevent some other external parties to really penetrate your network. It's by really know your enemy before. You know, threat intel is really based on that. So what is in our aviation sector, the things that can really be interested for our competitors, for our enemies? Is it something related to our production sites? Is it something related to our patents? You need to know that, and you need to be really well protected about that. So this is the main 5 things that I wanted to discuss with you today and to present. And all these things are covered by Internet of Things and cybersecurity. Thank you.
So you were talking about security from design, and I wanted to ask a common question for all of you. In the first place, you've been talking about cars, trains, ships, planes. Is it enough with securing this transportation media, or should we do something else? Because it's very well to have secure ship, train, plane, vehicle, but how can we secure the whole system? And also, how could we connect or notify this information so that we can give better responses, or in order to protect each other better? So any of you, feel free to answer the question. Well, in the railway sector, we cannot separate these things. Everything is interconnected. And not because, as I've said before, security and safety are interconnected too. I mean, in the end, passengers just know the trains, but the trains are constantly talking with the different elements in the railway. Everything is connected through a contact center. There is a constant communication between trains, fields, and control centers. So we cannot forget about anything. Everything is linked. This is the answer to your question. We cannot forget any of the elements and isolate them, because otherwise we are going to be lost. Well, in the marine sector, and everything is part of a complex system that must be well aligned. In Spain, we have the operational headquarters, which has been created for the Atalanta operation in the Horn of Africa, in order to guarantee the transit of all European ships. And this is a European headquarters that connects industry, ships, with the security systems, and we have different units that allow to offer some security before terrorist attacks or other type of incidents of unmanned vehicles. And now we have the European Agency of Security that is also working with different European national agencies in order to create a big information center that allows us to unify the different transit areas, control spaces, and marine authorities so that information can flow and security is guaranteed. As for vehicles, what can you say? Because it's obvious that in the railroads, in the ports, security can be implemented there. But what else can we secure beside a vehicle? Well, we are talking about security by design because we are not just talking about a vehicle. We are talking about the applications that connect to a different backend. So all these applications must talk to each other, must have a security objective in order to reach a final product that is secure and safe. And I'm not just talking about the vehicle and the ecosystem around it. We are also talking about roads, and roads also have communication systems that must be secured. And other type of elements intervene here too, and other type of companies too. So what we are trying to do is reaching agreements or consortiums through which we are being forced to talk the same language and have a global objective of reaching security. We have also international platform to exchange and different perspectives, because things that can happen in a road are going to affect our vehicles too, and the other way around too. So this is what we are doing, and also as a challenge, we should stop talking about road, ports, railways, etc. A risk that can affect a ship can be reflected in a plane or in a vehicle. So having a global platform of information exchange could be a good example or a good objective that we could have, so that in the end we are all updated regarding cybersecurity in means of transports, and in order to minimize the potential risks. And also this can be translated into other sectors such as water, electricity, or other first need sectors, right? Yes, as for the...
In aviation, I would say that, first of all, like in every company, zero risk does not exist. So as far as you know that, you have to work first on a risk-based approach and said, okay, what are the main risks, what I can protect from this risk, and try to mitigate those risks. And I think all of my colleagues have already spoken about that. It's very important, and it is also in the aviation sector, that we have common exchanges with all the involved stakeholders. So we at Airbus are aircraft manufacturer or helicopter manufacturer, but we keep discussing with our customers and our airlines companies and the airports, because this is the same ecosystem with the same, let's say, risks sometimes. So we have some regular exchanges with all these involved parties in France, but everywhere in the world, where we can work all together to really reduce our risk. And it's not because you are completely protected on the manufacturing side that, for example, in the airport side, you have to do not care about that, because everything now is linked. You know, as soon as you, for example, do some maintenance on the aircraft, the airline company is aware and can share already data with yourself.
Tenemos tiempo para una pregunta corta y una respuesta corta.
So now we have time for one question, one brief question and one brief answer. Okay, I think everything is clear, so we have one more minute. Okay, it seems that we have a question in the end.
Allí al fondo.
Well, hello. I have a question. I know that this issue can be a little bit controversial, but in the transportation sector, blockchain and quantum cryptography is being analyzed from IoT in order to guarantee security and traceability of data. What can you tell me about it? Well, is this a question or is this a statement? No, it's a question. I want to know if you are considering this. Well, quantum encryption is not happening yet in the railway sector. As for blockchain, yes, we've had a pilot project in the Valencia in order to certify that the goods that come from containers is the one that should be, and this is what we are doing so far. Well, we are also doing some proof of concepts regarding blockchain, but not quantum. Of course, we are doing some proof of concepts in order to ensure that devices in trains and in the railways exchange information in an accurate way. I mean, they are already doing it. I don't want it to cause panic here, but in order to improve that. Well, quantum computing is going to change everything. We all know that, and we will have to work on that. But it's true that blockchain helps a lot regarding the supply chain, and it helps us verify that information is accurate, and it's used in very specific cases. Well, when I was talking about quantum encryption, I was talking about using entropy in semiconductors in order to generate private information. I don't know. Well, I mentioned quantum computing instead of encryption, but
in aviation, of course, we use artificial intelligence, we use big data. It's already in production in our products and with some customers, especially for the maintenance area. All the data coming from flight are already sent and compute with our customers. Blockchain is more a proof of concept today, but our teams are really looking to it. And I think it's part of our future in every sector to look at that.
Bueno, pues nos hemos ido de tiempo ya. Yo creo que hemos cumplido con creces.
Well, I think that we ran out of time, but this was very interesting. I think the conclusion is that everything is linked right now. It's impossible to isolate sectors or specific productions. Everything is going to have an impact on everything. And this is what we must take into account when securing our products or our services, because basically technology evolution should go hand in hand with security evolution, and especially cybersecurity too. And I would like to just ask for a big round of applause to our four speakers, Alex, Celestino, José, and Laurent, for the effort that they've made in order to try to explain all these things in this brief period of time. Thank you very much.